it comes and I will.
So I just started the meeting
Okay, terrific.
and
So
we'll just,
shall I call to order now?
yep, I'm just going to share my screen so you can see the,
Okay.
yeah, there you are.
Okay. So I'd like to welcome everybody to the Clean Energy Commission meeting of January 6th, 2022. And to open the meeting, I have a statement that we read before each of our remote meetings. This meeting is recorded by video and audio in accordance with state open meeting law. Pursuant to Section 20 of Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting will be conducted by remote participation. Additionally, all votes taken by the Clean Energy Commission during this and future remote meetings will be by roll call vote. If there is a public comment period, if you are calling, just see if I did, yeah, if there's a public comment period, if you are calling on a phone, you can press *9 to request to speak. If you are watching on a computer or device, there is a raised hand button that you can tap or press to request to speak. Persons who wish to view are invited at https://gloucester-ma-gov.zoom.us J and the number 831078258666. So, Gemma, let me just check. Have I read everything that is needed there, or do I have to read the join by phone stuff?
No, that should be fine. Just that there is an ability to join by phone. But do you just want to do a roll call vote and start the meeting? I am trying to make sure that our interns are able to get in. But yeah, if you don't mind just starting
Okay.
off, that would be great.
So I'll call the meeting to order with a roll call vote to proceed with the agenda. Let me start with Sam Zirgabel. How do you?
Present.
And I to proceeding with the meeting. Linda Brayton.
Aye, sorry.
John Moskal.
Aye.
Deborah Darby.
Aye.
Linda Stout Saunders.
Aye.
And finally, myself, Candace Wheeler, aye. So the meeting is hereby open. And let me just mention at the start that any discussion that relates to the Environmental Protection Agency or Harvard Graduate School of Design projects in conjunction with Town Green will be in the last agenda item in order to give John Moskal an opportunity to recuse himself if he is still in the meeting at that time. As an EPA employee, he must do this. So let us start with the question of whether we have any meeting minutes to approve tonight. I know that September meeting minutes, which I have been repeatedly promising to finish, are not yet finished. And Linda Stout Saunders, do you have any meeting minutes for us?
No, I don't. There's October and November outstanding.
Okay, we will bump those forward to our next agenda. Is there any report on a conference or meeting that any of our members have attended, or important webinars that have been participated in? And in particular, I'm thinking of the community electricity aggregation webinar that was held on December 7th. Linda Brayton, do you have any report on that?
On the gas leaks, John's favorite subject. The December 7th meeting, maybe Gemma would like to report or whatever. And that was a presentation by the CEA people.
Jim, is there anything available to quickly summarize what was covered on December 7th in the community electricity aggregation webinar? We can bump that forward if there's nothing available for tonight.
It is available on remote viewing.
Ah,
So,
okay. Well, since I don't hear,
it's really kind of a training. So
yeah, okay. let's just, then refer it to any members that want to see a little bit more detail on the community electricity aggregation topic can find it remotely. Linda Brayton, would you be willing to send us a link if you have one?
Yeah, I can find it.
Okay, terrific. That would be great. So let's move on to our first.
I have another meeting.
Do the gas leaks thing.
Oh, okay.
I went to a webinar that was put on by all of the utilities in the state. The
Oh.
future of gas in Massachusetts. It was really some really basic information about the DPU's role, the net zero by 2050 law, greenhouse gas, and so forth. But the point, I think, maybe the major point is just that they are collecting information right now from people of what they need, what they think. There was a survey at the end of it. I personally, especially because I needed to be anonymous for a bunch of reasons as it's turning out, just commented that I wanted to see, in particular, gas leaks addressed from the point of view of public safety, and that I did not want new infrastructure built if it could possibly be avoided. That's the kind of thing I said. But that absolutely was my personal statement. It wasn't anybody else's.
Very good. Well, thank you for updating us on that.
Little,
We do have an agenda item coming up, number
but
3, which is,
there's more hearings, and I'll let you know when they come up.
okay,
It's an important issue, let's face it, even if we don't necessarily all agree on how to go about doing something about it.
Yeah. I think that's correct. Okay, let's move on to our first major topic.
Candace?
Yeah? Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
I had, well, I know some of us attended on December 8th, I believe it was, the Cape Ann Climate Coalition meeting.
Yes.
Okay. And I don't know if there was anything that was necessary to report from there.
I don't think that any members had spoken up about wanting to provide feedback on that tonight.
Okay, it's just you asked about joint meetings.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so we can move that to the next agenda.
Okay, terrific.
All right. And then the other was, I did meet on November 19th with the folks at the library, the Lyceum Library.
Oh, excellent.
Okay, and there are a few things that I reached out to other folks for answers to questions. I haven't gotten all the feedback yet, so it's I'm due to get back to the library as soon as I have some answers for them.
Well, thank you very much for following through with them. We have all been interested in making sure that the game plan to have the most energy efficient possible public library, does, come to pass. And I know that the plans for the library, show many features that I think we're all supportive of, to make the library energy efficient.
Yeah, that is their goal also.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And now let's go to item 1, the Gloucester Climate Action and Resilience Plan. And I think tonight that we have some feedback from MAPC staff on the progress on the plan. Gemma, do you have any opening thoughts on that, or shall we just go directly to Vandu?
Yeah, Bun, are you able to share your screen?
I would need your
Permission.
yeah,
Let me
permission.
give you that. Sorry about that. All right, you should be okay now.
All right, can everyone see my screen? Yes?
Yes.
Great. Awesome. Great. Well, Happy New Year, everyone. Good to see you again for those who I haven't met before, but I think I met you all. I'm Vandu. I'm Senior Environmental Planner with MAPC and supporting Greg and Gemma with the development of the Gloucester Climate Action and Resilience Plan, CARP. So tonight, it's pretty exciting. We've done quite a bit since we kicked off in August, September. And so during this time, we have put together a draft greenhouse gas inventory, collect data, and put together a draft greenhouse gas inventory. So with that, I want to share just some snapshot of the findings that we have. And then we'll report back also on the stakeholder engagement efforts, as well as kind of the upcoming engagement for your feedback. But before we dived in, I know many of you attended the community kickoff meeting visioning workshop back in November, felt so long ago now. And just I want to take a minute just to check in with you to see if you, I know some of you have sent emails and feedback, which has been really valuable, for our next step of engagement. But I also just want to take a minute now to see if anyone has any additional thoughts or feedback to share among the group today. If you attended, I thought a few of you had.
Any CEC members have any thoughts or comments on the visioning workshop phase of the project?
Okay.
Okay, Bandhu, I
All
think
right.
you can proceed.
Yeah, if you hear back from your community members about anything, please feel free to share with me, Gemma, or Greg. Okay, so with that, I want to share with you here just a couple graphics in the next few slides, the greenhouse gas inventory for the city of Gloucester. As you can see here, it is noted that it's a 2017 greenhouse gas inventory. So this is because that's the latest year that we have in terms of complete statewide data where we use, for the greenhouse gas inventory. And so with that, I know there is recently a 2019 update from state as well. So our team's in the process of updating this tool as well. But I want to emphasize that with that in mind, I know since 2017, the city of Gloucester have done many efforts from renewable energy to energy efficiency initiatives across the city. And so while those are not taken into account, I think what we found here from the 2017 data still provide a very good snapshot in time of the emission sources for for the city based on the three major sectors, the stationary energy, transportation, and waste. And just before I dive in, just a quick background. So the sectors and subsectors used within this greenhouse gas inventory tool align most closely with the basic level reporting for the 2014 Global Protocol for Community Scale Greenhouse Gas Inventory. So there's the reason why it was set up a certain way. And the Global Protocol was developed by the World Resources Institute, C40 cities, ICLEI local governments for sustainability. So all of these, kind of very great organizations, and it was designed mainly to provide guidance for local governments across the globe to develop effective community greenhouse gas inventories. It just gives kind of a big picture here for you to see. It establishes basic reporting requirements for all communities when they do greenhouse gas inventories, and it details kind of how to quantify it based on the range of sources and activities. So that's why there is a certain level that kind of is globally across that, in terms of alignment. And so what are the sectors and subsectors included in this tool? As I mentioned, the three major ones are stationary energy, which includes in the subsector, which is residential, which is buildings, residential buildings, as well as losses from distribution system of residential buildings. The second subsector within stationary energy is the commercial, industrial, and manufacturing. The third one is construction and landscaping. So this is the construction and landscaping equipment and activities. And then the last one is energy industries. And so this is the stationary combustion of fuel of various equipment, such as boilers or generators. And then for the transportation sector, we're looking at the subsectors of on-road vehicle. So this is all trips taken by passengers, commercial vehicles registered to the community. Portion of trips taken within the community boundary by on-road buses and trackless trolleys. And then the second subsector is railways, portion of trips taken within the community boundary by public light and heavy rail. So obviously this is where we rely a lot on state data, available data. And last but not least, in the waste sector, we're looking at solid waste and wastewater if available. And so solid waste mean the municipal solid waste disposed in or by landfills, incineration, composting, and anaerobic digestion. And then for wastewater, it's the process and fugitive emissions from treating wastewater. So just to give you, a kind of a detail of what's included here or what has been calculated. And so as you see, and it's not surprising to see how it's broken down. And of course, just as building, you've heard probably from many presentations and from other presentations too, buildings is always has been that major sources of emissions. And you can see here, it's no different for the city of Gloucester, followed by transportation and then a small sliver of waste. I should also mention that the subsectors and subsectors that are not, there are those subsectors that are not included in this tool. And again, this is mainly because just to stay in alignment and also because of the available of statewide data, not robust enough to support the method and the calculations. And so what's not included in this inventory? We're talking about emissions from direct fuel combustions that support agriculture, forestry, and fishing activities. So like machinery, generators, pumps. There's also the commercial and national railways, as well as waterborne navigations and aviations, off-road vehicles, and for waste, industrial waste. So those are just kind of a small sample of things that are not included. And I know for the city of Gloucester, being a coastal city, there's ships and boats and fishing activities. And so that's something that we just have to qualitatively take into considerations as we're talking about goals and strategy development down the road as well. I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but if and when there is an opportunity to really produce a comprehensive, high level, technical greenhouse gas inventory that dive into all of those activities, that's where we'll be sure to, make that happen. At this point, I just want to make sure that, and this is sufficient, I think, in terms of giving you a snapshot of what are the emission sources and how it's break down in your community so that we can move forward with focusing on the goals and strategy development for the action and resilience plan. So again, just a couple more charts. And with that, I just want to show you this tonight. But after this, I'm working with Gemma and Greg too to develop a memo that summarizes all the data and data source and data types that will be more helpful to share with you so that you can dive more closely into that. John and Linda, I guess I could take questions right now as well.
John was first.
Yeah, Vaughn, going back to your initial inventory, you mentioned wastewater. Did you do anything to address the fact that Gloucester owns and operates its own drinking water treatment and all the pumping stations and stuff that go to both move drinking and wastewater around the city, which are, they're electric loads largely, but I'm wondering if that is absorbed in here somewhere or it's something you need to look at.
Yeah, excuse me. I believe so, because those are the data that would be registered with state. So this is the waste data is probably where we get from, our the state data where possible, and whatever is provided by DPW, I believe, Gemma. And so I definitely will take a closer look. That's a really good question. I can't remember right on top of my head right now, but that's something I can look in and kind of highlight that for you. But thank you.
And I can just, so our Mass Energy Insight data does include all of the energy data for all of the city facilities, including the wastewater treatment plant. So we do have that data.
No, not wastewater, drinking water.
Oh, excuse me. Yes, the all of the city facilities are included in that in terms of their energy
Okay.
data directly from National Grid. So it's pretty granular data.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Vandu, my question is, before I get too lost in this, maybe I missed it. I just want to understand what I'm reading here. For instance, under transportation, the 105,543. What does that number represent?
That's the metric ton of carbon emission, carbon dioxide emission equivalent.
Okay, so that answers my other question here. All right, just wanted to clarify, I understand what I'm reading.
No, thank you for clarifying.
All right, thank you.
Okay. And then just a few more charts. And of course, like I said, there'll be a memo of follow up with you so that you can dive into this information more closely as well. And I'm sure there'll be more questions for clarification. But I want to show here also within the stationary with the residential, the building sector being kind of the larger emission source. So here I have a breakdown too in terms of the energy sources. So looking at the three major one, electricity, natural gas, and oil. And I'll show you in the next slide, and you can kind of see what I mean is it's not meant to be compare apple to apple, but it's comparable in terms of kind of what you fit in the region and as at the state kind of outcome findings as well. So as promised, here I want to show you what I was able to find a breakdown from the statewide greenhouse gas emissions by sector from the 2017 data up top here. So again, as you can see that the building electricity kind of take the bigger piece of the pie, followed by transportation, and then there's waste. So it's, you know, the portion emission sources are fairly comparable in terms of that, like the source proportion there. And then what I have down here, and again, as I mentioned, this is not meant to be compared apple to apples because the way data is collected and calculated, if we collect information from communities, it may vary a little bit, but I just want to give you kind of a snapshot here of some of the communities that we have also conducted a 2017 greenhouse gas recently to show you kind of where you stand across. So I have here Ipswich, Marblehead, and Peabody. So we had a conversation yesterday with Greg and Gemma, and the question was, you know, are we kind of evenly there? And I would say yes in terms of the breakdown. And it's not, you know, because this is not this data, like I said, doesn't include the renewable energy projects, the wind turbines and energy efficiency that the city has been done since or working on since 2017. Then so, you know, but it might, you know, change a little bit and improve here and there a little bit, but overall, I think this is kind of a good snapshot of your community, and in this case, compared to the others. Any questions? Okay.
I don't know
Yep,
if we-
Sam.
I do have
Yeah,
one.
Van. Yeah, Vaughn, I was just wondering if the stationary energy, you said that's from, or for Ipswich and Marblehead, they're municipal utilities. But for
Yeah.
Peabody and Gloucester, you said you got that information from National Grid. Do you know if that takes into account our group allocation and the green energy allocation that we're doing in Gloucester, or does it take into account, you know, solar on people's residential homes and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think that program started in 2019. Correct me if I'm wrong, Gemma. And so that piece, so that's why it was not included in this 2017. But Sam, that's a really good point. And that's what I mean is that's something qualitatively we'll take into account, you know, as we.
But those numbers would be ridiculous to get anyways. So yeah. All right,
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah.
Sam, isn't Peabody a municipal light town as well?
Actually, now that I say that, I think it is too. You're right.
I think these three are all municipal light. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a quick question, Yvonne. In the upper pie chart, the Mass 2017 greenhouse gas emissions by sector, you've got building consumption at 31.9% and electricity consumption at 18.6%. In your previous slide, building consumption was the electricity or the energy. How is it different here in this pie chart, please?
Different methodology. So I just wanted to show you here kind of the snapshot of the breakdown, but it comes down to the different methodology being used and how sectors and subsectors being grouped.
So how is the building consumption a different sector from electricity consumption sector?
Well, it could, you know, it would be that subsectors within, you know, it could be beyond buildings, for example, the non-buildings infrastructure that also use energy, right? I can't, I'm blanking on top of my head right now, but like it's like street lights, for example, and things like that. So that's just kind of a quick example that I could think of, but that's something I can clarify too.
Please, thank you.
Mhm. Okay.
Very good.
Great. So this is just a quick highlight I want to share. And of course, you know, we will work with Gemma and Greg to refine further upon receiving your feedback once we are able to follow up and share with you more of the data. I'm hesitant to share the inventories, you know, at this point, just giving the nitty gritty of the numbers. You know, in terms of like the formulas and all the calculations, but it will be publicly available. And with that, also understanding that, you know, this is a valuable tool, but there are formulas again and methodologies. And so we will also be putting together some training materials too, so that, you know, after this, when it's time for doing updates, you know, that can be done by the city as well, just kind of understanding where the data and data source is coming from.
And I'm interested in unpacking some of that data for residential use as well.
Mhm.
I don't know if you guys have the ability to do that, but, you know, for instance, looking at the ratio of oil to gas heat in
Yeah.
the city, and looking at then the percentage of emissions coming from each of them to see if you have a disproportionately higher emission rate from a smaller number of oil heating systems as opposed to the gas system, so that if you do want to kind of, you know, target higher emitting sources for outreach, that there's a way in this data to allow us to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So all of that breakdown is available and we can dive into that.
Thanks.
Thanks. Great.
I wonder if we could just quickly ask, based on the pie chart and circle graphs that we've seen, it's clear that we'd like to be able to sort of use those as a basis for trying to prioritize what actions and policies we should pay the most attention to the soonest. You know, the huge importance of both residential and transportation as big proportions of those charts certainly point us in that direction. I would like to congratulate the city of Gloucester for having moved on aggregation, because by converting you know, more of the residential electricity consumption to renewable consumption through the aggregation program, it's clear that's a sector that we should target, and we have targeted it. But if there are any other, you know, sort of priorities that the MAPC planners, including you, Vaughn, and the others who are present, would recommend us to think about based on what you're seeing in that split. You know, it's hard for us to figure out, you know, a way to reach all owners of vehicles in Gloucester as simply as we were able to reach the electric customers in Gloucester in order to change the transportation impact. But clearly electrification of transportation is going to be an important goal for clean energy in the city to look at.
Yeah. Yeah, no, well
Well,
put, Candace. Yeah, go ahead, Sam.
And as what, what John was saying, if we're realizing that crude oil burning is taking up a big, percentage of it as well. And if those people have access to, I know we're not fans of National Grid natural gas pipelines because they are leaky, but if, transporting, changing some people over from burning crude oil when they do have city natural gas lines, if it's more efficient, that's a very basic first step,
Yeah, and I think we have, enough communities that are spearheading, as the leaders in climate action. So there are examples and best practices that we can learn from. So in your case, it's, understanding here your portfolio. It's a matter of being creative and how to kind of target if there's something that you have already done. For example, you have done energy efficiency initiatives. So how to take that to the next level to make sure it's more inclusive and it's also kind of capture, in a more equitable way, for example. And if you recall, I forgot to have that here, but in the first meeting, I had this graphic of spheres of influence. And so what's within City of Gloucester control, what the cities can support. And then they're just this outer sphere that you can't control at all. And so with that, we will craft goals and strategies so that, whether you advocate for a state level, for regional level kind of communities come together to move forward with strategies that will, benefit and help kind of improve or enhance your community's priorities. And you're not alone. And so they're, streamlining that process. But then if we know there are actions that can be taken on by the cities, it might not be overnight or tomorrow, but something we can set up over time so that it's a long-term benefit. So those are kind of the ideas that we want to continue workshopping with the CEC members as well as with the communities. And I don't want to spoil alert, but that's kind of the next step where we'll show you where the engagement will go. But yeah, all the great points. So with that, I want to share with you, aside from the visioning workshop that we did in November, which we had really great turnout, I believe there was between 50 to 60 at peak at some point, and we had great robust workshops, small breakout groups to kind of start getting community members warm up in terms of thinking about what do they want to see happening as climate actions for the city. I had the pleasure to have the mayor-elect join my group, so no pressure, Van, but I think it went well. But with that, we also launched a community-wide survey as well, and it is still ongoing. I believe Gemma has already put together, there's some flyers that we can distribute as well as a web page on the city's website that there's a link and everything that can be sent to the survey. But so far, after about a month and a half or so, we already received a little bit over 200 responses, and the numbers continue to climb every day. So it's really great to see that. And again, just kind of here, just a quick summary. Obviously, this is not finalized by any means, but the majority, obviously, of community members do indicate that they're worried about climate change, as well as that they think the climate actions are urgent. Understanding kind of the climate impacts anticipated that are their main concern. For example, more severe weather events, rise in public health issues, impacts to the environmental and natural resources, especially like invasive species, things like that, rising costs of living, food, utility bills. So all of this is, kind of really all encompassed together. And then we had also a question kind of with a list of best practices from communities that have done or is doing their climate action plans. And we list some of the example strategies and just ask community members or survey participant to kind of rank in terms of what they see as high priority and or what they don't know and want to learn more about. And so with that here, it's really great to see, wanting to understand more about energy efficiency, especially for landlords, aside from homeowners, provide community share solar projects, especially for low-income households, adopt community zero waste goal, And then high priority actions to consider are advocating state and federal lawmakers for more funding and policy. So thinking about already preparing and enhancing and adapt for residential area that are, in identified flood risk areas, things like that. So just a quick snapshot to get you a sense of the responses that we received so far. And these will be really great for us too. When we have the conversations with community members going forward, but also as we kind of have an understand more of like the type of strategies, which one that we should go ahead, develop and implement, whereas which one that we should provide, develop more educational outreach awareness programs to reach more folks, for example. And then what we're doing currently is conducting internal and external stakeholder interviews. And so here are the lists. And I believe last time we did ask you to provide your feedback in terms of who we should have a one-on-one conversation with. And so on the left are the department boards and committees within the city of Gloucester that we are going to reach out and request a conversation with. And then on your right is the community organizations. This is only a starting point. And we already start having some conversations with these groups, and it has been really great. And they're committing to participating in the future workshop, so it's promising that way. But like I said, this is only a starting point, and I'm hoping that it's kind of like this snowballing effect, where from starting from these groups that will understand and learn more who else are out there, and also just to leverage their connections to kind of disseminate information and communicate kind of our ask that way as well. Okay, and with that, I'll turn over to Gemma to share a little bit.
Hi, thank you, Van, for all the work you've done on data and community outreach. So I just wanted to give a little bit of an update on how community outreach related to the survey is going and kind of next steps with public meetings and things like that. So again, the survey is still open, but we do have 204 responses at this point, or at least at this snapshot. So, in terms of representation within the Gloucester community, I think we're doing fairly well. We have a pretty strong, a pretty even geographic representation. In terms of household type, 22% are renters who responded to the survey. I think in Gloucester, it's about 35% of all units are rental units. So it's a little bit underrepresented, but I think overall pretty good. In terms of race and ethnicity, this data is a little bit more on the vague side. There's quite a few that preferred not to answer or said other, but it's definitely showing that we could do a little bit more work, particularly targeting those environmental justice blocks that include minority populations. And then I think that the thing we continuously see in Gloucester when we do surveys is a really strong representation from the sort of 45 and above group, and less representation from younger populations. Although here we are seeing a really good, little block there for the under 18 group, which might be related to some of the work our interns have been doing, and I'll introduce them in a moment. But we definitely need to think about how we target that sort of 18 to 35 or even 18 to 45 group, like young families or families in general, or younger people, how we kind of can bring them into the conversation a bit more. So we are really excited. We have hired 2 interns, and they have been doing a little bit of work so far. We hired them right before the holiday season. So it's mostly just laying the groundwork, but I'd love for them to introduce themselves and just say a little bit about what they've been working on. And Mila, maybe if you don't mind going first.
Yeah, for sure. So hi everyone, I'm Mila Berry. I'm working as the college intern for the CART project. So far, most of the work that I think both of us have been doing so far has been focused on outreach. Specifically, I've been there was a poster previous to my joining the project that was sort of advertising and trying to raise awareness for this survey. So I just kind of revamped it, added a QR code so that people can scan it, so they don't have to just type out the link. And in the next week, I'm hoping to head down to Pond Road to get it printed out so that I can start posting it downtown and people can sort of get to see it and become more familiar with what we're doing. So yeah.
Cami, if you want to introduce yourself.
I'm Cami. I'm a senior at Gloucester High School, and I was working the past few weeks on getting the survey out to the entire school, and I've been working with the administration. So hopefully by tomorrow we're going to have it out to the entire student body, and then working with getting in contact with a few other groups that within the school, like clubs and some places that some of the other students work.
Great, thank you very much. We really appreciate all of that, and I'm sure everyone here will get to know each other through this process. Van, do you mind going to the next slide? So what is upcoming in terms of community engagement? There's a number of community meetings, community workshops coming up, one in January, February, and March. So it's going to be a sort of a sprint to the end. Those will probably be towards the end of the month, and I think we usually do Thursdays at around 6 p.m. So I will, anybody, if there's any community members on this call, we will be advertising those on all of the Innovate Gloucester social media, and it'll also be on the CARP, Climate Action and Resilience Plan webpage on the city's website. And if you attended a previous meeting, we'll also probably do an email blast out to anyone who was on a previous meeting. So we talked a little bit about the last Clean Energy Commission workshop. Another hope with these meetings is that we'll be able to prepare some materials after each meeting that can be a meeting in a box. So anybody who wasn't able to attend, or it's harder for them to kind of get to the table, we can send that out to like youth organizations or the senior center, and they would have the opportunity to kind of access those resources or get that feedback in the spaces that people are already spending time. So maybe we'll just open it up real quick if people have questions about outreach or any ideas on reaching some of those target groups that we're maybe needing a little bit more representation on. That would be welcome.
So CEC members, any particular questions or comments that you'd like to add at this point?
I see Linda raise her hand. Linda Sauter.
Okay, Linda, it's your turn.
You
But
on mute, Linda?
I think you're on mute.
Hang on. All right, now you can hear me. Jimmy, you mentioned the target groups. The target groups are they all residential, or are we also targeting businesses and the other list of municipal, you might say, departments and organizations and committees?
Yeah, so there's kind of two phases of this. Van has been, if you see this list, Van has been reaching out to these community organizations and holding stakeholder meetings with them. But we also are planning to bring together some boards and committees within the city to basically have a stakeholder meeting as well. So there's that effort happening. And then there's sort of the effort of getting the survey out there, getting the word out generally about this plan to those community members that, maybe aren't quite as tuned into what's happening in the city. So like younger residents, low-income residents, renters. And so that data was kind of like giving us an idea of, who maybe isn't hearing about what's happening along this plan.
Yeah, and just to add to that, and so this will also help us to do our outreach when we put when we're hosting these upcoming 3 workshops, because it will be open all to public, and we really look forward to have, not only business or organizations, but residents to join these conversations as well.
Okay, so we are specifically also including businesses, commercial, industrial, and so on.
Mhm.
Okay.
Linda Brayton, your hand is showing is up. Would you
I
like to?
just had a reaction to the age groups. And I don't know, maybe this is just off the wall, but the group that seems to be the least involved at this point are kind of the age of young parents, perhaps. And it seems to me that maybe through the schools, a lot of people in that age group could be reached, the parents as well as the students, I guess is my point. But
Yeah,
it was
I
just
think
that
that's a
kind of
really
a
good point.
knee-jerk reaction. It's like, wait a minute, where are the parents? Because that seems to be the age where
Mhm.
people are probably holding 3 jobs and trying to feed their kid, whatever,
Yeah.
all-
Yeah, that's really good feedback. Thank you.
And there was one other hand up a moment ago. At the moment, Deborah Darby. You had a
Yeah,
comment.
hi. Yeah, thank you. Hi. On the next slide, you had mentioned that these community workshops are open to the public, and if you really want to have a robust turnout, if I could use the word robust, perhaps if there's any opportunity to even put like a something in the local paper, just to do a little bit more outreach. Maybe it's a letter to the editor or some other type of a public notification would be great. That's all.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
It's a really good idea. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I would just
Okay.
like to, comment that we're so glad that we have 2 interns that are participating in this and helping us reach out to the sectors of the community that they have got good access to. And welcome, and we're really happy to be working with you.
Great, thank you. And so with that here, I want to note the next steps, upcoming things that we're continue doing for the project. The community survey, like we mentioned, is ongoing. I think we're gonna, with Mila and Cammie's help, to really do the outreach and pump out the information and encourage folks to pick the survey. Same to you too, CEC members, if you can, share this with your network, that would be really, really appreciated as well. And then, we'll continue doing the stakeholder interviews where, like I said, there's external as well as internal. So there are roughly 20 or so interviews that we're going to try to get through before our first workshop in late January. And of course, in the meantime, we will be preparing the program for the first workshop, which is focusing on goal development. And this is going to be a bit of some information, providing best practices. What have we seen? What have we learned? What's going on? State context and things like that to sort of set the boundary and the program. But really, we want it to be, a participating effort, kind of all hands on deck. And so we'll have kind of small breakout groups as well to have a space for our community members to participate and provide the input. So with that, I think that's all I have for today. And of course, I'll take any questions or any suggestions. And of course, after today, please feel free to email Greg, Gemma, or I at any time. We always love to hear from you.
Well, thank you very much, Vandu, and we will be looking forward to
have
participating.
Looks
one
like
other-
Linda has one more question.
Oh, sure.
Just so I don't have any, I'm working off the same page here. Back to the greenhouse gas inventory from 2017. Is that the greenhouse gas inventory that we're working off of going forward? Or is that being updated?
So that's the greenhouse gas, the the one that we will be using as base. I'm not gonna tie to the number, neatly, but that's kind of the foundation that we will use for going forward for developing goals and strategies, focusing on the evaluation and prioritization and things like that. But yeah, that's, that will be available. I guess at this point, given that that's the kind of the, I want to say, Gemma, correct me if I'm wrong, but that might be the first kind of complete, it can serve as kind of your baseline going forward, as you set targets for the city.
Yeah, so I think Van had said that they're going to be training us in how to update that data. So we will be able to update it going forward to kind of see, how things might have changed. But it is a lot of the actions that you can take don't necessarily always reflect in the inventory. So it really is kind of like a starting point to understand, okay, these are the places where we're emitting a lot. So these are the places where we want to target efforts. And then you have to kind of, believe that those efforts, are grounded in sound thinking. And so they will be affecting, those sectors as it stands. So you have to kind of think of it not necessarily as a way to see exactly how our emissions go up and down in these little sectors, but to really like broadly prioritize where the city should be putting its energy, because there's a lot of emissions happening in those areas, if that makes sense. So we can do an update. We will be trained to do that. I'm not sure how much that will tell us in terms of, the effectiveness of the goals that you have all laid out, or the things we've done, since 2017. But we do have the ability to do that. And again, it's really for prioritization.
Yeah, and I can give you just quickly, if I can, like an example too. What we're working with right now is with the town of Acton, a smaller, more inland. But what we did is also just kind of have an understanding of the greenhouse gas baseline. We didn't do the greenhouse gas inventory, but like we have the information. And so we moved ahead understanding like, the emission sources and where the sectors that we need to focus on to develop a plan and strategies and all of that. And so that was phase one. And so what they're moving into phase two is doing a more technical analysis, evaluating the high prioritized strategies elected by the community to move forward to understand exactly kind of like the feasibility of what implementing. And so I think focusing kind of like that resources, once you have more specific strategies, does have that benefit. So you understand more, and that's where you can kind of have a more concrete number of like what strategies kind of give you what. So just an example on that. But yeah, to Gemma's point, this is kind of give us a bigger picture.
I just had one more thought to throw out there, and that is I think we need to be thinking about and learning about how we, as we do accomplish climate-related actions and policies, how we can measure their impact. You've laid out the baseline for us, and I guess what I'm saying is, who is going to figure out how our actions affect the proportions that we see in those graphs as of 2017? So that, for instance, if our aggregation percentage goes up from its current level of somewhere in the 30% vicinity to a higher level of renewables as a source of our electricity used by residences in Gloucester, how will that appear on the graph, so that we can start to see visually how effective our actions are in moving the lines. And
Candace, I don't think those numbers would be able to come up on those charts.
Say that again, Sam.
I'm not sure if those numbers would be able to come up. I think like Ron said, like we got to look at that as kind of a barometer for where we should be pointing ourselves more.
Mm-hmm.
Where should we be addressing ourselves, not how effective our things are.
Okay.
Yeah. So to that point, you can measure your impact of your strategies, but that would be a different set of more technical, higher,
Much
kind
more
of like more
complex
detailed
numbers,
level. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, good.
That's a lot of formulas I'm not familiar with.
Okay, thank you. So is item 1 pretty much complete for this evening? Relative to the CART plan, Gemma, or do you have any other things you want us to be aware of, or should we move on to item 2?
I'm all set if you're all set, Van, with what you had
Yeah,
to
no,
present.
thank you. Yeah, thank you for giving us a room to kind of share with you our up to date, and we'll continue doing so throughout the projects. And looking forward to having your participation at the workshop meetings if you're able to join, but we'll be, like Gemma pointed out, we'll be debriefing you and getting your feedback throughout as well. Thank you.
And in order to participate in those workshops, we should visit the CARP site website to get the dates that you choose.
We're working on that, so it's not quite there yet, but we're working on that, and we'll set up links, and we'll be able, we'll make sure to share all that information with you.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, the second item on our agenda this evening is an update on Green Communities program status. And Gemma, would you be able to, I don't think it's going to be very long, but just let us know what's happening in that arena.
Yeah, so, well, we submitted 2 things. We submitted a Green Communities grant, I believe in October. And then a little bit after that, we submitted a updated community inventory. And we have not heard back on either of those, which is good news, especially on the inventory. They didn't seem to have any feedback for us yet, but we're still waiting to hear on the grant if we are able to go forward with this project. So kind of in a waiting period at the moment.
Okay, great. And is there a sense of when their next round will be open? I know we can't do much to plan for the next round until we know what we got from the round that we're already in.
Yeah, so I didn't see a next round open, but I believe that you actually need to close out your projects for the previous round before you can apply. So I think that they have 2 rounds a year, but you have to wait till you've closed, you have to finish your projects in a half a year. So usually people, do the projects over a year and then apply in the next round.
Okay. Terrific. That sounds very good. And we're excited about the possibilities. So item 3 is.
I have my hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
That's okay. I just wanted, can you just give a very, give a summary of what's in the grant proposal? We may well know already, but I don't remember.
It was quite a long time ago that we submitted it, so I might need to.
Then I don't feel bad.
No, it was just it's just been quite a while that they haven't got to us on that, but let me see if I can pull up the scope of work.
It's actually, Gemma, probably in October, I did get a look at it before it went in, before it was signed. I did see a copy of it. I have it somewhere, but I mean, I was just hoping for a summary, but also if there's no reason that it's not to, could you circulate a copy of the proposal? I guess that's the question.
Yeah, if that works better for you,
right?
maybe I can just send out an email with our scope of work in it, and you can take a look at it.
Like that. It's just, the sort of a general sense of, I mean, I was really impressed when I saw it at the time, and it was, all psyched up about it, but now, of course, I don't remember either.
Yeah, it was a combination of like lighting projects. There was some work that was going to be done on energy efficiency at the Talbot Ice Rink. So it was a combination of little projects, but I think it was mostly lighting and the Talbot Ice Rink. And there might be one other that I'm forgetting right now. There might be one other that was standing out that I'm forgetting, but I'll send it to you.
If you guys just get an overview of what's happening, that'd be wonderful. Then we can feel good. Look what we're doing. And we're, of course, doing anything you are.
When you think of what the city has accomplished through the
that's right. Well, that's in there too. The list of accomplishments, and that somebody ought to put that on the front page of the Gloucester Times, where people will give it to Animal Aid for the kittens. But I don't know. Anyway, it would be nice to have it out there, because it really is impressive when you see it, all lined up like that. Anyway,
Terrific. Okay, so now shall we, let's see, no more hands up at the moment. Let's move on to an update on the act relative to the future of heat in the Commonwealth, proposed state legislation, and the utility company webinar on the future of gas, which was mentioned earlier this evening. And what we're hoping for, is just, to keep our eyes out on this legislation. It's extremely ambitious. I've heard from both John and Sam, expressing concerns about whether it's realistic to imagine that a dramatic reworking of the gas system can be done without humongous expense on the part of both individual residents and businesses and the city and the state government and the federal government. The capital costs are huge to make that transition, but we also don't want to miss out on any possibilities that legislation has for things that are feasible in the short.
Well,
run.
I think that our concerns, or sorry, I didn't raise my hand, Deborah.
Oh, okay.
I think our concerns are that the idea of just ripping out, and putting in geothermal lines across everywhere, that's just one aspect of that of the future. Obviously, a big aspect of it is stopping natural gas leaks. So I think that I just want to be hesitant to not confuse like me and John are against the whole thing on the whole. It's just that the realisticness of installing citywide geothermal pipes is not really realistic. I don't think. Just small clarification.
Oh, and when you think of the enormity of that web of pipes that's already under the ground and trying to either convert or replace it, you're right. It's a big deal.
And also, there's a lot of different types of geothermal with different coolants. But again, that's one aspect of it, and I think that there's other aspects of it, like taking care of all the natural gas leaks and phasing out some other things. I think there's a lot of good to it.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know we've had some of our citizens out there have looked hard at this legislation. I don't see. Oh, yes, I do see. Marcia Hart is here, and her hand is raised. Marcia, can you hear me? And can you join us and summarize your point of view on this? Marcia, I can't hear any action coming from you. Gemma, is there a way to bring her in? I don't know if she's muted.
Yes, sorry, I will actually promote to panelist. All right, so she should be in, and Marcia, if you unmute, you should be able to speak.
Thanks.
Oh, good, there you are.
Hi.
Hi.
There's a really complicated history around the future of heat bill, and the way that I've come to look at it is that we have committed to going off of fossil fuels by 2050, and that is unnecessary, but as Sam and John feel, just daunting. It's really hard to conceive of what it takes in order to do that. But that is the law, and it's going to remain the law because the effects of climate change are going to be witnessed more and more, and the damage from that is going to start to weigh in a larger capacity, and people will realize that they have no choice but to transition because the cost of not transitioning is so great. And that will be in lives, property, all kinds of areas. So the Attorney General was one of the people that instituted this look into the gas companies about 1.5 years ago, and asked the DPU to investigate what the gas company's plan is, since we are going to not be using fossil fuels in another 28 years, supposedly. I mean, that is what the plan is. And so the DPU, which is generally pretty conservative, opened up an investigation. And there is now a committee, which the gas companies hired a consultant. And the report from that consulting is due at sometime in March. I think maybe the 22nd or something like that. So the gas company is supposed to look at itself and determine what is your business model for the future. So the part of the Attorney General's concern is that the gas company has plans to spend a lot of money, at one time projected at $9 billion, not by the gas company, but by an outside research group. That was about 4 years ago, and that cost has gone up to $20 billion. So the cost of replacing all the pipes in the Commonwealth is exorbitant, and it leaves us at about 2050 with new pipes, but we're not going to be using gas. So the question of the Attorney General is, what is your plan? Because you cannot transfer these stranded assets in the 2040s to our poorest people, who are going to be the last ones who are going to be capable of transitioning off of gas. So this bill has a provision that after 2050, the gas company cannot charge for stranded assets, for infrastructure that they've built. So it's the encouragement to them. So they are, in some ways, this bill gives them an opportunity to assume a new identity as a deliverer of renewable energy to their customer base. A lot of people say, well, who wants them doing it? They've screwed me one way and another. So even I've heard senators in our state house say that, like Senator Barrett, are we sure we want to give them this business? But they have rights to pipes under the ground. They have a trained workforce. They have the billing that, you know, allows people to somewhat equitably get their gas bills. So there's a lot of infrastructure that they have that's useful to everyone. And if they don't transition, what are they going to be? So that's sort of, I understand both of your concerns about the cost. It's just the public who often advocates for renewables and for all these changes really haven't conceived of what it's going to mean to their lives to do that. It's going to mean that everybody's going to end up buying a heat pump, an electric car, fixing their house. And if we don't do that, I mean, the consequences are pretty terrifying at this point and already visible. So we're going to be living with the types of storms and sea level rise and all kinds of really destructive forces that are in play and not stoppable at this point. So we're trying to make it so that it isn't worse, or that the human race isn't exactly, it doesn't become extinct. So that's what, you know, if you look at it from that perspective, the money may become a little less of the biggest issue. It always is an issue. It's why the governor, who is a fiscal conservative, nice man, but quite conservative, has been dragging his feet on a lot of these issues. And so anyway, if there are several deadlines that are coming due from the next generation bill passing, and like the opt-in stretch code, which was another thing that I know your group is interested in. And there were supposed to be 5 public hearings about that. And they were postponed from November until January. And now they've been moved sometime into the more distant future. So it will give people an opportunity to weigh in on that. I don't believe Gloucester is economically ready to opt into a stricter net zero stretch code, but there are communities like Brookline and Arlington, some of the wealthy suburbs of Boston, who are ready to do that. So they will be like pilot projects for communities like Gloucester, who will see what works and what doesn't, and some of the bugs will be worked out before maybe we choose to opt into something that is a factor, a huge factor in development, a cost to people that are doing things. But the costs are starting to equalize. And at least I heard with the Cameron's project, for example, that it was the Harbor Light people who said, you know, you could do this building more energy efficient without it being more costly. So the reality is that the costs are coming down in the renewable area, and they are not coming down in the fossil fuel areas. So if you have any questions, I'll do my best, but that's sort of, if you kind of roll that all around in your mind in terms of, you know, what you think is supportable. The Future Act does not specify a type of thermal energy. And today somebody sent me something. It was invented in Denmark or in Norway, and it's a heat pump that connects to many more types of heating, cutting down the cost of it without these horrendous renovations in your home of pipes or getting rid of your radiators. So, you know, who knows what technology will be available in that field. It's rapidly developing. And there are a lot of places that have put this into place, mostly sort of created communities, and they've put it in place, and most of them are further south. So there are questions about whether or not heat pumps are good enough to be in this area. The last thing I heard is yes, they are, but I can't verify that. So I hope that helped.
Thank you for the really.
So can I add on to something? Going back to actually what Sam was saying, there's this whole array of possibilities, but apparently this is the point in time that we, others, do need to weigh in if we have something to say about this array of possibilities. And certainly Marcia has just explained a whole lot about, you know, how many pieces there are to it. I just want to read it from my notes that I wrote before, but from the gas companies. The gas companies are exploring different ways to achieve net zero by 2050, which includes reviewing several alternative technologies, traditional natural gas. Using these alternatives could require changes to the home appliances and commercial equipment that currently use natural gas. The technologies described were geothermal heat pump, networked geothermal heat pumps, air source heat pump, renewable natural gas, or biomethane and hydrogen. So this is, I mean, all right, so the next deadline for them is March 1st, 2022, when they send 2 reports to the DPU. And to this end, gas companies need feedback from stakeholders and customers to inform the transition to clean energy future. So at this point, I mean, maybe we should start taking policy making, I won't say more seriously, but it's more immediate, because there is a March 2022 deadline, and they are asking us, whether they want to ask or not, they are asking for input.
Deborah?
Yeah, thank you so much. So in getting ahead of this, with the future of heat in the Commonwealth and the legislation, we're not going to really have the opportunity to change households over, but maybe a place for us to begin is with our new school and have some conversations there. The ground is shovel ready. That could be an area where we could provide some education and have some influence in doing the right thing with the new school.
Others may have more information than I do, but one concern I have is that the plans for the new school are pretty well developed and detailed already. I don't know when construction is supposed to begin if it has not begun yet. Do any of you have any sense of, is there?
I actually went to one of the meetings probably a year or better ago. I went to one of their meetings and I just asked, what are you doing about this? And they were, you know, they were right on it, and they were doing to me, I forget whether it was what LEED certification or whatever it was, but they were right on doing it, you know, top notch. So I don't worry about most of these projects in the city because they really get good consultants and they care at this point. But anyway, they in the initial design, they had already absolutely taken that into account, and as has the library, I understand too.
Terrific.
And not that we shouldn't pay any attention, but I'm not thinking that, gee, they never thought of this. It's not like that at all.
Okay, next hand, John Moskell. John, are you there?
Before me.
Oh, there you go. Excuse me.
Go ahead, Linda.
Linda Saunders.
Yes.
Oh,
Linda
okay.
Saunders.
Well, a little bit further from what Deborah said is we keep using the words, you know, cost prohibited, but all in the realm of retrofitting, renovations, replacements, but we continue to perpetuate with new developments, whether they're residential, commercial, or industrial, the use of fossil fuels, and the school being one. And at a minimum, as is done in some other states, all buildings should be required to be, as example, if they're sited properly, solar ready. There's no reason why, I don't see anyway, why new developments can already be incorporating heat pumps as an example, because it costs a lot more to go back and tear things out and retrofit. Even if you just looked at a simple lighting project, it costs more to do it that way than to do it right the first way.
Mhm.
The one thing, Marcia, when you were speaking about the stretch code, the new opt-in stretch code, why I was wondering that it's something that Gloucester could not afford right now. I'm unclear as to that statement.
I personally think that the will, Gloucester was, as far as I know, unable, as just about the oldest city in the entire nation, to get a demolition delay ordinance passed. There is a development community in Gloucester that is not entirely progressive. And when something comes up that's business threatening, they can be quite vocal. And this is something that impacts them. So I can't see that happening just yet in the first wave of, I mean, Gloucester adopted the more stringent stretch code. And I think that one kind of fits right now, and that it would be a stretch to push for net zero, which is what the next stretch code does. I just don't, that's my reasoning.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate because again, it's going to end up costing everyone more money. And the delay causes more harm to the environment. And we all know that.
Well, you can start, I mean, now that we have all these zoning things that are before the community, I question why we aren't looking at our zoning from the aspect of climate change, since we're on the coast and have all these other issues. So I think that's a worthy topic of conversation in the city, to bring that in as people are already concerned about zoning issues.
Correct, right.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's why, I mean, we had several years ago already a meeting with the planning board, and on this very topic, how, you know, energy efficiency and lack of other, you know, terms, it has to be number one on their checklist, what they go through for considerations. And then, of course, the citing of certain developments and other issues. Okay, but thank you for your research on that.
Sure, thanks.
Okay, John Moskell, your turn.
Okay, so let me go back to my axe that I'll grind again. And what is our role here? And who are we? What are we being asked to do? And how does that line up with our charter, which is to advise the city? You know, what, you know, are we being asked to provide a recommendation, an endorsement? on a piece of legislation, and you know, and to whom. All of the other details and stuff aside about that, I don't believe that we're part of a group that ought to be making public comment on this for something that, you know, whether comments are due by the end of March to the DPU. That's not our role for this. And I think we need to redraw the lines in the sandbox and figure out, you know, how we're going to interact with the city on this, what our role is for that, and give the city good advice into what the actual impacts to the city of Gloucester are of this legislation, of doing nothing, of being more aggressive than the legislation asked for, and what the impacts are. And the other thing I'd say about all this stretch code stuff, and I look at this through my day job, Gloucester is a poor city, okay? We're a bunch of really well-off white people sitting here, you know, talking about asking people to expend $30,000, $40,000 on their homes when the majority of the city doesn't have it. We get into these debates over wastewater infrastructure and how you are going to be imposing, you know, costs for water rates for projects that are in the tens of millions of dollars. And you look at the median income of the city, and, you know, we have trouble using our own federal requirements of imposing immediate costs on that, because most of the people, frankly, in the city can't afford modest increases like that. And so I think we have to really take a look at these sorts of things and figure out where the sweet spot for the city is in terms of recommendations that we can make to our elected representatives to get engaged in state processes. And I'll get off my soapbox now.
Well, John, at some point in the future, I hope we can talk more about the kinds of things that you think both CEC and our city council and mayor can do appropriately. You know, so
well, again, I think the city council and the mayor are, it's within their wheelhouse to opine on this legislation and decide whether or not they want to support it. It's the job of the Clean Energy Commission to make a recommendation to those elected officials to decide if we want to do it. But it is not our spot to write a letter to the state from ourselves saying
initiate it.
Support or don't support this legislation. That's not in our charter. It's not anything that we've ever done. And, you know, and I just don't think that's something we're in the business of.
Mm-hmm. So city council's initiative before CEC plays any role in that is basically what you're saying. They need to, the city and the mayor, the council and the mayor need to articulate that they want a recommendation on that topic.
If they want a recommendation on that based on input they're getting from their constituents, you know, we could sit with folks like Marcia on one side and on other folks on the other side, and the companies, and you know, take a look and make a recommendation as to what they ought to be doing based on our assessment of the impacts of this legislation to the city, both good and bad.
Before you get more upset about that, John. No, I'm not here asking.
I'm not upset about it. You know.
Well, there were two sessions, which includes 4 years prior to last year, and where bills were being sent out to municipalities to be signed. And one of the last one was the Future Act, and you in fact signed that paper. So the city has done this, you have done this. The one before that.
I understand. And I guess my point, Marcia, is really one of process, and that we, you know, we should do this when we get asked by the city
effort
to do
isn't
it.
even being made this time for municipalities to weigh in, because I think that the people that are really pushing this bill feel like they have enough steam behind them that they don't have to go that route of adding that type of support. The Climate Coalition is going to support this bill. You don't need to do that. I think you could, I think it would be super helpful if you continued with thinking about how you could impact the city in terms of zoning and from the perspective of what your purview is. I think that would be really helpful. And I think keeping track of what's going on at the state in the administration has their own whole set of climate planning that is going on. And you, as a committee, you should be aware of that. And the same thing.
And we are, and I'm
Yeah.
familiar with the state being sued year after year after year for legislation that they've been unable to implement on the climate change front.
What
know-
my point is that you can take what you know from, you know, this, I know you go to webinars and Linda does, and take that information and disperse it so that your city councilors know more. So when things do come before them, they aren't doing, like, I felt like the two issues that came before the council on gas really helped to educate the council. So now we don't, some of those people are still there, some of them aren't, but there are more educated people on our council about the safety issues, the stranded asset issues, the issues that go along with gas, and we have it everywhere. We had an explosion in Gloucester. They should know as much as possible, so you can help to educate them with whatever it is.
And that's our wheelhouse, and that's been
Yeah.
for,
Well,
you know, for a long time.
I'm just here to add some more information. And
Okay.
I do follow legislation, but I really don't have many expectations for other people following it the way that I do, because I know they won't. So it was
thank
just to
you,
add
Marcia.
to the conversation. Thanks.
Okay.
Well,
You
I think
went-
in the spirit of education, you know, again, one thing that I didn't want it to seem like the opposition that we had was like just about spending money, right? You were like, oh, we have to spend money to be green and to make these changes. I 100% agree. My point was that, you know, statewide geothermal might not be the best solution for us. And furthermore, I've seen when the investor-owned utilities, mainly Eversource and National Grid, get their hands on legislature, they make it self-serving. And that's what is, you know, yeah, right, crazy. And their hands are in here, and their pipes are in the ground. As you said, they have pipes in the ground. They're putting up new pipes in the ground, and they want to continue their monopoly on our utility and our controls. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't spend money to find these solutions. I'm saying maybe allowing the investor-owned utilities to help with the legislature that makes it self-serving, so communities are still relying on their monopoly over all our utilities, is not the move. And I'm not saying I oppose the future. All I would say is, you know, we have to be wary of any time that investor-owned utilities are part of this legislative process.
I think you have a real friend in Senator Barrett, who is the co-chair of the TUE committee that hears most of the climate bills. And that is his concern. And he is constantly concerned about the individual person who can't afford to make this transition. So he's trying to fix Mass Save, which is a program that's had very little oversight. Right now you can transition from oil to a heat pump, but you can't transition from natural gas to a heat pump. And that's because of that type of lobbying. That is a real concern, Sam. And the bill it's going to, right now there's a drop dead date on the 2nd of February where bills die, they go to study, which means they kind of go into a coma, or they go forward. And when they go forward from there, they usually go to the House Ways and Means. And there, the bills either, again, die or they move forward and become law. And then there's a lot of conversation. And what's likely, because there were over 300 climate bills out of the 7,000 bills that were introduced this session. 300 of them I've tried to follow and narrowed it down to about 25 that are really worth paying attention to. And that's really what I'm doing. So when I send in a letter saying I'm in support of this, it's not going to make it pass. I'm sorry, there's more forces that are stopping that from happening than I'd like to think about. But this bill is about triage and transition. It's about fixing the pipes and requiring the gas companies to get some kind of model that isn't specified, and to every year have more of what they are giving to their customers be renewable. So it's a long-term solution that isn't going to all be paid for, but in the absence of something else, they are going to continue to put all new pipes in the ground to the tune of $20 billion. And it's though the same people who you want to protect are going to be the ones who are going to be expected to pay for that.
Okay.
So it's called triage and transition.
Mhm. I see Linda Brayton's hand is up. You're muted. You're muted, Linda. Whoop. There you go.
Okay. I'm not even sure why I first put my hand up, but this has been, I think, really a useful conversation. Marsha, I'm very happy that you can communicate as well as you can what the issues are. I agree, we have our wheelhouse. I'm all for the boundaries, everybody stays in their lanes. However, we do also need to be educated ourselves to some extent or another. I have also gotten caught between a rock and a hard place as far as me personally. I have to be very careful not to be making statements for other groups, and it's not just the Clean Energy Commission. So that's why I emphasize, if I feel strongly about something, I as an individual, I have my First Amendment rights and blah, 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 but I cannot give anybody the impression that I'm speaking for anybody else officially. And I try very hard not to even imply it or get anywhere near it by this time.
Well, we've all got to keep in mind, you know,
I mean, we don't, I mean, I wouldn't want to speak for John here. I mean, that would be very disturbing, for example, nor would I want him speaking for me. So, but anyway, that issue is an issue, and we need to, you know, just keep an eye on it. But I also think we can't just be, oh, this is our thing and we can't think about anything else, and we have to just, you know, not be aware of it's like, hey, guys, there's, you know, thunder and lightning going on outside. Don't pretend you don't need a raincoat. I mean, we have to have some awareness in order to be of use to the city officials and the planners and so forth and so forth. So there's some happy medium here.
Well, because of
The other part on the stretch code, I got real jumpy because economic justice type things, environmental justice things are near and dear to me. This city has nearly half of the people in it that are low income or low moderate income and eligible for services. It's not just the developers and whether or not they're going to make money or they're not. Clearly they have their stuff. However, there are people that can't afford a damn box of Kleenex to blow their nose when they have COVID. And those people have to be taken into account too. And it's not like it's only a few, it's a whole lot. And some people, you'd be surprised. So anyway, so the stretch code thing, I went to it, I didn't even know what by now, but I went to something where I heard people talking about it. I do think that just psychologically, sociologically, we need to not be the first ones out of the gate on this. Let the wealthy communities do it because their people can handle it. Eventually it's going to be the law anyhow, and it'll be incorporated. But we really, I don't think we could push it through first, and I don't think we should try.
And I think, Linda, that's a good point. And I also think that we have many communities in the Commonwealth that are playing that role. Like if you look at Newton and Brookline and Concord, all of them are, you know, really on the outer edge of these kinds of actions. Their communities are more able to afford them, and they have broad public support.
Well, and we in our community are doing a huge amount through the weatherization programs in action. You know, you bring up Cameron's or whatever. I mean, we have the place where we can really make a difference, and it's something that's ours to do.
Yep.
That's where we put our energy.
I believe there's a point in the legislation, it might be 2028, where everybody needs to adopt the new stretch code.
That's what happened last time.
So there's a time frame where we will need to, and maybe we'll be able to do it sooner than that. But just to be reassuring, Linda and everybody else, one of the things I've noticed in following the legislature is that the sensitivity towards communities that have been disadvantaged historically, or the poor communities, every bill just about has a portion of it that addresses that. That wasn't true until just a couple of years ago. And COVID and the disparity in the communities that were so badly hit by COVID, for all the reasons, because of pollution, because of, you know, not having the money to see doctors or buy good food, or all the reasons, that has become really clear to the legislature as a whole in a way that it wasn't before. So some of it is lip service and some of it is incredibly sincere, and you can read it in all the bills that are out there. Every climate bill has something in it just about environmental justice.
Good.
It's quite a big change.
So making a lot of noise sometimes gets a little bit done. Or a lot of pain, and it's obvious and people can't stand looking at it anymore. I don't know.
Well, I think we all, if you think about it, unless we actually meet those targets, we're screwed. And if people can't afford it, then the society needs to find a way to help them to do that, or we're all screwed. So it's self-serving, and it's also just being sensitive to equity.
Well said.
Well, I think this discussion has been, very informative and useful. Thank you, Marcia, for all of the vigilance that you have poured into tracking the legislation and expressing it so clearly tonight.
If anybody has questions, you can get in touch with me. Candace knows how. And if you want some fact sheets on the Future Act, the League of Women Voters is supporting it.
Okay.
So it's getting to be more mainstream.
Okay.
I have background information if you'd like it.
Okay, great. I know I'd like to take advantage of that. And, I'll be in touch with you about getting some things that we can send to the commission, the whole group.
Sure.
Okay, let's move on. We have item 4 on the agenda was the transition to electric school buses topic, which we began at an earlier meeting. However, as John pointed out at some point last time, the new mayor and his administration are just getting their teams organized. I think that maybe we should prepare for our next meeting to address the question of, what's the best way to support a transition to electric school buses, and, whether that is something that is on the mayor's, sort of vision for the first part of his administration.
Actually,
Go ahead.
yeah, I can address it pretty quickly. I got Greg Catamatori, because based on how we decided in our last meeting, wanted to contact the school committee directly, which he did. And he was told that they went ahead and renewed their lease for another 3 years of their existing fleet. So at the moment, it's a moot issue, although they intend to, they're open to looking at it for the future. Why they renewed a 3-year lease that wasn't coming due, at least according to what we were told back in the spring, I don't know. Gemma, you're back on. Are you familiar with this?
So I have the same information as you, that they have renewed their lease, but I will say that, there's an opportunity in the climate action planning. If this is something you want to discuss as a potential priority, that's a way to think longer term, thinking 3 years down the line, what kinds of things you.
Yeah, and I would think that, even the buses that they're leasing right now, the companies are open to transitioning because nobody renews their fleet 100% to EV. So they would probably roll out some electric vehicles anyway, buses, under the existing lease. I don't see that that would be such an obstacle. But as Candace mentioned earlier, when Van Dew was presenting the plan, was electrification of transportation is one of the key items to be focused on. And, you know, that is a piece in the city where we have an opportunity. So it is something that we'll keep on our back burner to follow up with school committee, I would think.
I agree. I think that sounds like a good plan. All right, and then I don't know if there's anyone out there who has any updates on the Harvard Graduate School of Design and EPA projects. I know that John Moskal needs to recuse as I raise that question. Goodbye, John. Thank you for being here.
Goodbye. We'll see you guys soon.
Bye, John.
And at the moment, as I look at our attendees, I see Marcia is there, but I do not see Dick Prouty or anyone else, Valerie Nelson from the Town Green group that is kind of coordinating the work on these projects. So it may be moot for this evening unless I see Linda Brayton's hand is raised. Do you know anything, Linda, about this?
It's a comment about the information that came out from Town Green a few days ago, or maybe a week, in their newsletter. And I see that Town Green on January 15th will officially be a 501c3.
Correct.
So congratulations to them. That was really needed, really necessary, and it will definitely help with a whole bunch of, I don't know.
Yeah.
Boundary and lane issues, actually, and legal issues. I mean, I just think that's great.
Yep.
I think I don't know for sure. I gathered that they were working under the 501c3 of the Meeting House Foundation.
That
Me,
is
it's been
correct.
something that's been bothering me for a long time, and hey, congratulations. So Town Green, I guess, is like a fiscal manager, conduit, grant raiser kind of organization. Cape Ann Climate Input, maybe just Gloucester. Cape Ann Climate Change is doing much more, I would say, outreach and public education and policy and that kind of thing. But it's, you know, they have a different mission.
Right.
And then the Harvard project, I'm not sure. The EPA apparently is giving services to the four communities. That I'm still not clear on, but it's lovely that they're doing a really good project. And I'm much more myself confident that it's being done in such a way that it's not going to backfire in some weirdo way that we don't know, but it's there. So I just feel really good about how this thing is starting to get clarified.
Thank you,
So,
Linda.
good job.
Deborah, do you have any thoughts on that topic? I see your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you. So both Marcia and we participated in the vision policy and legislation, subcommittee of the Cape Ann Climate Action, and the Town Green projects, tend to, if you will, get updated to the group. And Marcia, feel free to, add any commentary, but my understanding about the Harvard Grad School that both Valerie and Dick, they really don't have any updates on how they don't have any report outs yet from the Harvard School of Design. So there really is not too much to report at this time. But I think there is also some curiosity with regards to maybe with what the Clean Energy Council might be involved with. Regarding the MPAC work and public outreach, if there might be any sort of coordination with surveys or outreach to not connecting with the same people over and over again when some of the questions or surveys might be overlapping.
That's a good question, because it's hard enough to get really good public participation at one hearing, workshop, or whatever. And if a very similar one is being offered by a different group, there may be a real loss of steam, in having too many repetitive meetings.
And
But-
Marcia has her hand up too, I see.
Okay, good. Marcia, do you have a comment?
Um,
I
Can you hear me now?
can. Your picture hasn't come up, but we can hear you.
Yeah, Deb's right. I think the expression they're going apace. The Harvard project is going apace and the EPA project, they're both underway. I haven't been involved in anything, even though I spend a lot of time with both of those groups. There's also the Voices project, which was separately funded, and there was funding that Safathi had committed and that Greg Verga approved also. That's to do ethnographic research into the community, which is the other level of looking, calling people up and talking to them. So the several groups are supposed to get together. Dick Prouty is sort of in the center of it, and Valerie and the city. And so people are going to talk to each other about how to approach the community and not overwhelm people with those overly frequent questions. With the Voices project, there are graduate students that are going to come and live in the city and just go around and talk to people, kind of a little randomish. And Town Green is also launching a interviewing process because they're looking for people to do that. And there's going to be some sort of training. So I agree, it can just end up being a mess unless it's well coordinated.
Right, and what I thought was challenging that I asked the question, they're not going to be recording either audio or video. It's just really going to be, hand note taking. So, I mean, it's a big effort to reach out to people and, the information, I think what you were saying, Marcia, regarding the Visions project, if I'm correct, that all that information is for internal reflection and not for external consumption. So all that effort to reach out to citizens and or groups and to get their perspective on what it's like to live here is really for internal use and not for any external use.
Yeah, I'm not totally clear on that. I know they were trying to protect people from feeling like, to have them feel more free to talk, that it wasn't being recorded. That's intimidating to lots of people.
Of course.
But I'm not sure about that. If it's collected sort of just, or if I don't know that they're going to hold on to it that close. That doesn't make sense to me, but I'm not really participating in those as yet. So I'm not sure.
Yeah. So that's the update.
We'll find out more for the next meeting.
Okay, very good. Jeremy, do you have any final thoughts about, trying to coordinate the outreach that you're doing for CARP with those other two efforts that are underway?
Yeah, so we have been emailing back and forth with Valerie Nelson about the Voices for Climate Action. So we are planning on, sitting down and talking with her and just sort of figuring out what the role of the city is there as a stakeholder. And so I don't have much more to say. I'll probably know more after we end up talking to them. And then also, I know Van has been looking to reach out to Town Green and the Cape Ann Climate Coalition as stakeholders for the CARP. So that could be a place for them to, talk about the work that they're doing and where there might be overlap there as well. And that's all really valuable.
Okay, interesting. So Town Green and CACC are in effect both stakeholder groups that are recognized in the city's effort. Okay, well, that is very interesting. I think that that brings us pretty much to the end of this agenda. I did want to mention, I received a note from Cape Ann Climate Coalition with an alert about an act to transition Massachusetts to clean electricity, heating, and transportation. It's House Bill 3288, Senate Bill 2156. Senator Boncour and Representatives Decker and Garabally are leading the charge on that legislation. And I can forward the piece of information that came to me to the CEC members, unless you've all already received it. Does that ring a bell with any of the rest of you? Because if not, I will.
Please forward it.
Yeah.
Please forward it.
Keep it forward.
I will do that. All right. I don't know if there is a date for the next CEC meeting that is tailored to MAPC's availability. If there was a February date that was already vetted for participating with MAPC on an update on the CARP plan. Or is Gemma still here?
Yes, so sorry, I'm still here. So right now we are working on pinning down some dates, both for those 3 upcoming community meetings. But I do think we have a Clean Energy Commission meeting, which is, let me see, I can find it. So I have a February 10th
So
meeting.
do I.
Okay, good. Let me just check the city calendar and see if it's on there yet, but we will definitely get it up there as well.
Okay. Just so CEC members try to reserve that day. Do you know if that's a Thursday, Gemma? Which is
Yep, it's a Thursday, I believe, at the usual
The
time,
Thursday.
which is 5 p.m.
okay. So to adjourn this meeting, I will need to do a roll call vote once again. Anybody have anything to say before I do that? Okay, it sounds like we're ready. Let me start on the upper left of my screen. A motion to adjourn. Linda Brayton, would you make a motion to adjourn this meeting of the CEC?
Move that we adjourn this meeting.
Okay, roll call vote begins, and I'll start with you, Linda.
Need a second?
Oh, yes, I'll
I'll
second it.
second.
I'll second that.
Very good.
Get that.
Okay, Lee, please.
Enthusiasm, we finally agree.
Linda Brayton, how do you vote?
Aye.
I also vote aye. I'm next on the screen. Deborah Darby,
Aye.
Linda Saunders,
Aye.
Sam Zergabel.
Aye.
Okay, and that is all of the membership that is now present. John Moskal was recused a while ago. So I hereby adjourn this meeting and thank Gemma so much for supporting us in this meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good
Bye.
night.
See you in
Thank you.
February.
Good
Have a
night,
good night, guys.
everybody.
No.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.